Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Jack Edwards and I cannot believe I'm saying that we are midway through the year. And yet, my year of reading has been anything but mid. These are the books that I've rated 5 stars so far this year. In fact, I would give these books 6 stars if I could. If that was possible, that's what these would be awarded. And the thing is, I'm not gonna lie, I think I might be a tough critic these days because at this point I've read so many good books in my lifetime and ranked so many excellent books 5 stars that to join those ranks, a book really has to be so excellent, has to be kind of a new favorite book of all time. And I think that these ones are. These have been stuck in my head more than espresso. These books bang more than the characters in challenges. And frankly, they are the creme de la creme. Do you know, one time when we were kids, and I'm so sorry to my brother for telling this story on the internet. He must have been like 8 years old when this happened, by the way. I just want to put that out there. But we were sitting around the kitchen table and my brother tried to describe something as like the best it could possibly be, and he goes, "Oh, it's just so good. It's the creme de la fresh." And I will just never be over that. I will never stop laughing at that. You know when you have an inside joke in your own head? Like I think of that as if it's a pop culture moment, as if it's a meme that everyone will understand if I say it. But now you guys know, so that's the important thing. Anyway, these books are the creme de la fresh, and so I wanted to tell you about them because we're halfway through the year. At the end of the year, I will be doing my annual best books of the year video. Sally Rooney is not yet in this list. I still have Intermezzo to read, and if that book doesn't make my top books of the year by the end of 2024, oh lord, there's gonna be riots in the street. That would be crazy. If I don't like the new Sally Rooney book, oh wow, I'm gonna have a whole identity crisis. But for now, telling you about these 7 books is my public service to you. I feel a sense of obligation, a moral duty to tell you about the best literature that there is out there at the moment. So I'm gonna dive in, but I just want you to know that I would like to kiss all of these books on the mouth with tongue. If I could wed an inanimate object, I would, and it would be this stack of books. Now, the first one is Happy All the Time by Laurie Colwin. I won't lie to you, I judged a book by its cover. I picked this up just because I thought that the cover was cute. It's 2 people sitting in bed reading the newspaper, and I actually think this cover does such justice to the book. It's about very ordinary relationships, an ordinary kind of love. There aren't these big gestures. No one flies in on a helicopter to confess his love. No one plucks a whole florist of roses just to tell someone that they care. This book is about ordinary people, ordinary love, the small pleasures of life, and we start out with 2 best friends, Guido and Vincent. And the book primarily focuses on them, but also other people in their orbit. Each is kind of looking for love, and eventually both find it. So then we see the story of these 2 couples, the ways that they interact, the ways that their lives intersect, and these 2 characters aren't expecting to fall head over heels in love with someone, but both of them do. Guido with a woman called Holly, and Vincent with a woman called Misty. They all have this wicked sense of humour, kind of acerbic wit, and the book is about falling in love, but also jealousy and estrangement, getting entangled and intertwined with each other's families, and also the ways that we try to protect ourselves. You know, when we feel ourselves falling for someone, we want to kind of wrap our hearts up in bubble wrap and say, don't get hurt. So it really thinks about the barriers that each individual person puts up, and then the ways that they slowly start to bring them down once they find their person, and it's just lovely. Each character is messy and flawed and imperfect, and I think that's what makes them so lovable to me. So it's kind of like a rom-com in a book, but it's also literary and beautiful, and the descriptions are gorgeous. The humour, like I said, is very funny. It's just sweet, and it's one of those books that stuck with me. I underlined so many great pieces of dialogue, and the way that it writes love, you know, the experience of being loved but also loving someone else, is so universal that I totally didn't realise while I was reading it that this came out in the 70s. It wasn't until I got about halfway through that I realised there weren't references to modern technology. And then I looked at the publishing information at the front, and it turns out this was originally published in 1978 and then re-released in 2021 in this edition. And there's something about that that just felt so special to me. The fact that this book came out so long ago and yet it still rings so true, and that the sentiments referenced are just as relevant and pertinent today. The book feels incredibly wise. I'm so glad that I read this in my 20s. This feels like the experience of being in your mid-20s, I think. Like mid-20s and onwards. I adore this book, and I'm so happy that I just stumbled upon it one day in the bookstore. And you know what? Normalize buying books just because of their covers, because you may discover an absolute gem. I haven't heard anyone talking about this book, and I need to shout about it from the rooftops as of this moment going forwards. So that is Happy All the Time. I will be talking about this all the time. This is a very recent release. This is called Evenings and Weekends. It's by Oisin McKenna. It's a debut novel. The fact that this is a debut novel is frankly offensive to me. This is absurd because it's so good, and I feel like he writes with such authority that I'm like, who gave you the right to believe in your source to such an extent? It is so brilliantly written. Again, I feel like I would put this up there with books by my favorite writers like Toni Morrison and James Baldwin, because the way it writes the human condition is just immaculate. It's set in London, and London is almost a character in this book. It is so felt in every scene. The culture of being in a bustling city, but it's so specifically London. As someone who has been very, very lucky to get to live in Paris and New York and London, this is just the London book of the modern age, I feel. And I think it's gonna age like a fine wine. This feels like a book that we're still gonna be talking about in a decade's time. I think that people will still be loving this and enjoying it and discovering it. And so this is your heads up that you can be one of the first. It just came out. Neve Campbell on the cover describes it as Zadie Smith-esque in its kaleidoscope of London. And I do think kaleidoscope is the perfect word because it's vibrant with all of the colours. It's multifaceted. We have this brilliant cast of characters. It feels like a modern soap opera. You have a couple who are engaged to be married. You also have another couple who are expecting a child, but they're not sure if they're ready to wrap up their lives in London and leave and go back home to the small town that they were originally from. You also have two of their mothers, one of which has just found out that she has cancer and needs to tell her adult son. You have people navigating open relationships, communal living, people discovering their sexuality, both earlier on in life and also later on in life. You also have a whale. Basically, at the very beginning of the book, you find out that there is a whale stuck in the Thames River in London. And that is kind of the big news event that is happening in London at the time. There's also comments on the political happenings and situation and hot pot that was kind of happening in 2019 at the end of the Theresa May government. It's set during a heat wave, and I think that the weather conditions really add to the intensity of what all of the characters are going through, because it's also swelteringly hot to the point of discomfort. You know, you can feel these characters as they sweat and they feel a little too close to one another. What I love about this book is that there are no villains. There are characters who make mistakes and mess up and have bad things happen to them or do bad things to each other, but it doesn't feel like there are any villains in the book, and that's because Oisin McKenna writes with such empathy. He writes every single character with fairness, and so they just burst off the page. It feels like any one of these characters could just get up and walk off the page and into your living room and you wouldn't question it, because that is how vividly they are written. It's about class, about how money permeates everything that we do. It's about sex, it's about love, it's about the city, it's about partying. It feels like a modern day Love Actually or something like that, you know, one of those Richard Curtis films. I think it's an incredibly emotionally intelligent book, whilst also talking about the gritty realities of being a human in 2019. So I loved this book so much. Evenings and weekends, more like mornings, afternoons, evenings, nights, days of the week, weekends, because that is when you're going to hear me talking about this. I am going to be insufferable. I'm going to be ramming this book down everyone's throats for the foreseeable future. I loved this so much. And also, I think this video will be going live at the end of Pride Month. This is a great Pride Month read as well, if you're looking for one. Now, you may get whiplash here from going from a book that just came out and is extremely modern to a classic. You already know what this is gonna be. It's White Nights by Dostoyevsky. I made a TikTok about this book saying, you think you know love, and then you read White Nights. And it went so viral that this is now considered to be a book talk book, which is insane to me. It's been incredible to me to see how many of you I've met out and about on the street and you've pulled this out of your tote bag. I've been going into bookstores and seeing a big stack of these on the counter next to where you pay, and it's just been magical to see this book kind of having a second lease of life, because I only heard about this book at the very beginning of this year. I'd read a few Dostoyevsky books, but I hadn't actually heard of White Nights. And when I tell you, I finished reading this book and I threw it onto the bed and just had my head in my hands, and I was like, that's one of the most incredible things I've ever read. I can't believe I will never get the experience of reading this for the first time ever again. Like, it is one of those books that I wish I could just wipe my memory, wipe my brain and experience it again for the first time, because it is just searing with this energy, this buzz of what it is to be in love with somebody. That's kind of a common theme throughout these books, I think. So I read it and oh my god, this is just one of the most devastating books about love I have ever read. In White Nights, two lonely people who are lonely for different reasons meet each other and they form a connection over a series of conversations, and it's about the temporary refuge that they provide for one another, but also the fact that this is fleeting. But they get this momentary bliss in each other's company, and I guess the message of the story is ultimately the most special thing is to get to experience that, is to get to have that moment where you realize love is real and I'm worthy of love because I've been able to experience this. It isn't destined to last, and so this becomes a story of unrequited love and yearning and solitude, and it warmed my heart and then it broke my heart into teeny tiny little pieces. And if I'd already loved you for 20 years, I still couldn't have loved you more than I do right now. Or this one, I love this one. We thank some people for merely living at the same time as we do. I thank you for the fact that I met you, that I will remember you for all my life. But how fine joy and happiness make a person, how the heart seethes with love. This is a book that seethes with love, and it's so special. I adore this book. I implore you to read it. And it's also very short, and you can feel smart because you read a classic, so it's a win-win. This book I love for similar reasons. This is Kairos by Jenny Erpenbeck. It was translated by Michael Hoffman, translated from the German, and actually this just won the International Booker Prize 2024, which I was lucky enough to host. And I have to remain kind of impartial and balanced because I interview all of the authors and translators at the ceremony, but this was the book that I was kind of rooting for to win. Actually, there were two books from this year's shortlist that I rated 5 stars, but I want to tell you about this one first. And this to me really did feel triumphant. It really felt like the winner of the prize. This is set in East Berlin during the years before and after the fall of the Berlin Wall. So that historical backdrop is so fascinating to me. This is a story of love and betrayal. The two characters meet each other on a bus by complete chance, and their chemistry is just completely electric and intimate. This love affair that they have is all-consuming. It just bubbles up inside them. But really, this book is an allegory about a nation that has ceased to exist. The ending I will never recover from, and quite frankly, I would like Jenny Erpenbeck to pay for my therapy bills, because what the hell, Jenny Erpenbeck? Why did you do that to me? But also, thank you. It's definitely cathartic. It feels like a real purge of the emotions. You feel every single particle of the tangible connection that these two people have. And it has this kind of free, indirect discourse style, very similar to, if you like Normal People, I think you will like this book too, because you can see inside both of their heads kind of simultaneously. So you see the ways that they communicate and miscommunicate. It's about loyalty, but also cruelty. It's about how two people navigate the ruins of a relationship and its intensity. Come, darling May, and put the buds back on the trees. The piano wishes at the end, but it's July now. The summer evening outside has turned into a summer night. The bottle of wine is empty. Do you feel hungry? Sure. Then let's go out. Sure. It feels good to be walking beside him, she thinks. It feels good to be walking beside her, he thinks. Just please, 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 please. In the words of Sabrina Carpenter, please, 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 just read this book. Although I do feel the sentiment of, I beg you don't embarrass me afterwards, because, you know, like when you recommend someone a book, you're like, please don't embarrass me. I hope you enjoy it, but I recommend this with full faith that you will love it. And, you know, if you don't take my word for it, it did win the International Booker Prize, so this was deemed the best book in translation of 2024 by an expert panel of judges, and I love it. Before I move on to the next book, I wanted to let you know that today's video is very kindly brought to you by Squarespace, because you know Squarespace gets a 5-star review from me every single time. Squarespace is the all-in-one platform for building a website or an online brand, and you do not need to be an expert web developer, you do not need to know about coding or anything like that. They have a range of incredible templates which you can customize and turn into something that you love and that reflects your brand or your business, your online store. And there are loads of great easy to use features features embedded into Squarespace. For example, the ability to make a blog and share what's going on behind the scenes with your business, an email sign-up list so that people can hear more from you. And also Squarespace has great AI SEO, so people can find your website with the right keywords. And that means that all of the effort of building this website will pay off because the right people can find it. Your customers can also get flexible payments. There are so many things that Squarespace does for you. And so if this all sounds good, you can actually get a free trial over at squarespace.com and test it out. And then when you're ready to launch your beautiful new website, you can use the code jackedwards at squarespace.com/jackedwards to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. You're welcome, you lucky sausage. Okay, the next book. I'm excited just telling you about these. So another book that was on the shortlist for the International Booker Prize 2024 was this one. This is The Details by Genberg and translated by Josefsson. And this book asks the question, does a portrait tell us more about the person being painted or the person holding the brush? It's a book about 5 people, but only 4 of them get chapters. So it's kind of fragmented in that way because we hear about each of these 4 people in turn, but each of these 4 people are in some way linked to our main character, who is kind of the mystery 5th person, who by learning about her friends and her acquaintances, we actually end up learning quite a lot about her as well and how she sees the world. I started to underline my favorite sections and then I just realized I was underlining basically the entire book, but it really does what it says on the tin. It really thinks about the details of each individual person down to the way that they store their shoes when they enter a party. The main character, who's the narrative voice, arrives at a party and she says she knew a certain friend was there because their shoes were on the rack neatly, whereas everyone else's were in a big pile in a mess on the floor. And it's just little things like that that I really appreciate. I love seeing a portrait of a person in that way. This is the opening to the chapter on Alejandro. Right when I wanted a hurricane, there was a hurricane. I'd longed to be swept off my feet, to get entangled in something, and I had the good luck of getting exactly what I asked for. The bad luck of getting everything I thought I wanted. The good luck and the bad luck of having my prayers about passionate love heard. This is something I want to sit down and study, like as if I was in a lecture. I was taking notes on craft about how to write a great book, how to capture the essence of a person. It's provocative, it's a powerful celebration of what it is to exist, what it is to coexist with other people, specifically these 4 people in this one woman's life. It won a bunch of prizes in Sweden. It was shortlisted for the International Booker Prize this year, and it is such a special book. I am so grateful that I picked this one up. So that is The Details by Genberg. Okay, we're on a little stretch of translated books right now, but this is Boulder by Eva Baltasar. Actually, coincidentally shortlisted for last year's International Booker Prize, but I only got around to reading it earlier this year. This is gonna sound weird, but this has the best sex scene I have ever read in literature in my entire life. Like, I remember I was reading this book and I was in Paris at the time, and I went for drinks with a friend who's really into reading, actually lectures in literature, and we met for wine. And I was like, before we say anything, read that section. And he immediately pulled out his phone, went online and ordered a copy of this book. That is how good the writing in this book is. It's about a woman who is working on a ship, and at one point when the ship docks, she gets off the boat and she has this crazy whirlwind love affair with another woman. And she's like, okay, I have to get back on the boat, but I'll be back here in 3 months. Will you meet me when I get off the boat again? And the woman says yes. So 3 months later, they meet up again, and the woman tells her she is actually moving to Iceland. And so they move there together. So they've moved to Reykjavik. The main character's name is Boulder, which is a nickname the woman gives her. So Boulder has essentially uprooted her entire life, moved to this new place with a new person, and this person turns around and says, I want a baby, and I want the baby right now. And Boulder goes along with it because she wants to make her new partner happy, but she realizes, actually, I don't really want a child. I'm not ready for that. And this kind of changes everything. And so she starts to weigh up what is more important to her, yearning for love or yearning for freedom. It is so gorgeously introspective. It feels like an absolute fever dream. Every single paragraph has a line that will knock your socks off. And it's actually translated from Catalan geniusly by Julia Sanches. This is my first Catalan book. There are actually 2 other books in this series, and best believe I have got both copies on my shelf waiting for me, but I'm kind of rationing them because I know how much I enjoyed this book. I'm like nervous to read the others, but this book is lyrical. It reads like poetry. It's brief, it's concise, but it is mighty. And I've said this before, I will say it again. I think it is such a talent to be able to write something this powerful in such few words. It was the winner of the English Pen Award. I am genuinely considering getting every word from this just tattooed on my body as like a modern art piece. It's that good. I'm serious. And the final book, show it to me, Rachel. Show it to me, please. It's Blue Sisters. This is by Coco Mellors. This is her second novel after Cleopatra and Frankenstein. And when I read Cleo and Frank, I was like, how is she ever gonna top this? And you know what? She did it. She did it with flying colours. I don't even know how that's possible, but she did it. This is a book about a set of 4 siblings, but one has unfortunately died. The other 3 are scattered across the world from their childhood home in New York. One is in London, one is in Paris, and one is in LA. And their parents want to sell their childhood home in New York where their sister died. And one by one, they find their way back to the apartment. And I really feel like this is a book about coming home, about coming back to your family, about coming back to yourself, and ultimately about how home can be a fluid thing, how home is a movable feeling. And as long as you are with the people who feel like home, you can experience that sensation. And these sisters have such a powerful bond. They also argue, they brawl, they say the meanest things they could possibly say to one another. But the best thing about this is those dialogues, is those arguments, is those discussions, because they are absolutely electrifying. It's like a tennis match as they're bouncing back and forth. And because you see inside each one of their heads, you kind of see them come up with the worst thing they could possibly say that will absolutely blow up a situation, and they're like, don't say it, don't say it, don't say it. Then they say it and they're like, damn it, I gotta stick by that now. Coco Mellors is a master of dialogue, a master of metaphors. Every line has been meticulously crafted, and she thinks of these characters with such depth, down to the reason for their phone password or their favorite Gatorade flavor. Like, every little thing has been thought of in this book, and the prose is just silky smooth, so easy to read, so bingeable, and quite frankly, I knew this was gonna be a 5-star read. From the opening paragraph, a sister is not a friend. Who can explain the urge to take a relationship as primal and complex as a sibling and reduce it to something as replaceable, as banal as a friend? Yet the status is used again and again to connote the highest intimacy. My mother is my best friend. My husband is my best friend. No. True sisterhood, the kind where you grew fingernails in the same womb, were pushed screaming through identical birth canals, is not the same as friendship. You don't choose each other, and there's no furtive period of getting to know the other. You're part of each other, right from the start. Look at an umbilical cord, tough, sinuous, unlovely, yet essential, and compare it to a friendship bracelet of brightly woven thread. That is the difference between a sister and a friend. I love it, I love it, I love it. I love it. And I don't even have sisters. I don't even have sisters, and I loved it this much. It's compelling, it's bold, it's beautiful. I am obsessed with this book. I'm obsessed with all of them, and you need to read these books. If you are looking for your next read, I implore you to start with one of these 7. I hope that you enjoy them as much as I did, and I would also love you to know what other books that you've rated 5 stars so far this year. Let me know in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to me rave about this literary alchemy. We are so lucky to live in a world where these books exist. So read them, enjoy them, follow me on Instagram and TikTok and my second channel. Subscribe to me here if you want to hear more of my book reviews and find out what other books I'll end up rating 5 stars this year. For now though, all the best, stay in touch, have a wonderful day, and I will catch you very, 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 very soon. Very soon. Okay, love ya. Bye-bye.